Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Today we're actually continuing on the topic of electronic ignition systems in the Datsun 260Zs and 280Zs. I thought this would be a good topic here just to continue on with, and that is on the actual distributor itself. So this is a distributor out of a California model 280Z. It's got the single coil. If it's a non-California, as I've mentioned in the past, you'll have two pickups. You'll have this one, which is the retard timing, and you'll have another one over here for advanced timing. And basically, if the car is cold, it's going to look at the other pickup. If the car is warm, it's going to be looking at the retard pickup. And so that's how that works. If you've got a 260Z and it's automatic, you'll have two pickups for the same reason. If it's a manual 260Z, you only have the one pickup. And so that's a difference there. As far as wiring goes, on the 280Z, they go out to a little junction box on your fender by your coil. So you can take that little junction box and open it up, and you'll see 10mm nuts in there. And these are all different sizes. As you can see, one's larger than the other. If you got a non-California, it'll be green wire, red wire, and brown wire. In this case, it doesn't have the advanced coil, so it's just a red and a green wire making this up. But what we're going to do now is I'll just kind of explain how this actually works before we go any further. So you hear me talk about pickups and you hear me talk about the reluctor. Well, I'll just show you the parts. So here's the actual reluctor here. I'm turning with my finger. It's got these teeth on it. And then this little black box right here is your pickup. And what this thing does, it actually generates AC voltage. So as these teeth rotate around that coil, it creates an electromagnetic field, giving you an AC voltage. And that's really what this thing does. That's all it's responsible for as far as the electronic parts of the distributor. And what that does from there is your ignition module knows how to process that signal, and it creates pulses off that AC signal from this system here. And that's how that all works. So this is very critical that this works before you start working on anything else in the car, because you can start throwing a lot of parts at a car that may not have a bad coil or bad ballast resistor, and it's all back to your pickup and and this stuff right here. Or in some cases, it's just the ignition module itself. So with that said, I'm going to show you a few tests we can do here. So the first test we're going to do here is actually test the ohms of our coil here. So we'll take the leads of our multimeter. I got it set to ohms, or the little horseshoe symbol or omega symbol. And we'll go here and we'll connect the negative to the green wire, positive to the red wire there. And we have roughly 720 ohms is what our actual coil resistance is. So if you see something that's really high, like 1 meg, that would mean you have an open. If you see something really low, like 1 ohm or 2 ohms, you've got a short inside that actual pickup coil. In this case, 720 ohms is good. So we'll disconnect our multimeter there. We're done with that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scope here, and we'll connect it to the green wire to our ground reference of our scope, like so. And I'll take my scope probe here, connect it up to the red wire. And now if I rotate this thing by hand, I'm going to put the rotary button back on here because it makes it a little easier for me to turn by hand. Plus there's a ton of grease in this distributor. I'm going to put that back on there. If I rotate this by hand, you'll actually see a signal generate on the scope. So you can see I'm actually generating AC voltage just by rotating this thing by hand. So if we take something like a drill, I'm going to go low speed. I'm just going to run this thing with a drill as if it would be on the engine. You'll see a difference in the and we got roughly 5.6 volts peak to peak while we're doing that. We got a 2 volt per division reference here. If I go to high speed, which will be more like the car's actually running at this point, we'll be running a little higher RPM with this distributor. You can see that we now got like 12.4 volts, 16 volts there, starting to saturate there, you can see. Actually, I think we're touching. Yeah, we're touching, that's what's happening. It's not saturating, it's just shorting out. Roughly about 15.8 volts there. course, when you're turning the car over, so you don't necessarily take your distributor out of your car to test this. Just disconnect these wires and hook a scope up to them, and you can actually just crank the engine over, and you can watch and see if you're actually getting a, like a 4 volt peak to peak is what I would suspect. 2 to 4 volt peak to peak. If I rotate this thing back on slow speed on my drill, that's about 4.6, and you can see how slow the distributor is actually turning here. It's just turning pretty slow. That's about 2.96 right there. So that'd be about the equivalent of turning the car over. And so that kind of shows you what you should see. And so if you don't see these signals, or if that's a really, really weak signal, that means that your coil also has a problem, or your reluctor has a problem. Either one of the two. There's I think the reluctor is actually magnetic. So if this thing loses its magnetic field, it can also cause problems. So keep that in mind as well. I will show you a close look here of this scope when I turn this thing over. So I've got my scope zoomed in here. I'm going to run it at a slow RPM here, and you can just kind of see how this will look on the scope. So you can see about 4.56 volts there on the peak to peak. Faster we go, of course, the higher the voltage there on the peak to peak. Of course, when we set my drill to fast speed, if I can get this drill to go, it's not my best drill. We'll go fast with this thing. You kind of see how it actually changed that peak to peak reading as you speed it up in RPMs. Now we're really running. 1.4, 15.2 there. So anyways, you get the idea of how this thing works. And that's a good test you can do with a scope. A scope is going to be a very handy tool for you in testing these systems out. But I just want to make a quick video here going over that. I thought you guys might appreciate this for those that are trying to troubleshoot your 280Z or 260Z. I know this stuff can be very very time consuming if you don't know what you're actually trying to look for, and some of the manuals are not very clear on this. So I want to take a minute and just go over that. If you're interested in other parts of the distributor, I've actually got a video on my other channel, because it was before I actually started this Projects with Jared channel. I've got a video on the vacuum advance system, as well as just a video on how the electronic ignition system works, which we covered most of it right here. But I'll put a link right now up in the top of this video if you're interested in the vacuum advance video, and I explain kind of what that does and why it's important that you have vacuum advance on these cars as well. But anyways, appreciate you guys watching, and there'll be more to come here very soon. Take care.